are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Progress Report, a late night show for you guys tonight. I'm here with Andrew Wilson. Owen Shroyer will be joining. I heard from him just like 30 minutes ago. He's on his way, so he'll be here soon. But Andrew, really a pleasure to have you back. How are you doing?
I'm doing real well.
Good.
Doing real well.
You were asking me just before we went live about my monetization on YouTube. And what happened was I was demonetized for like the last 3 years up until November is when I got it finally put back. I kept reapplying and they kept denying me. And I eventually just like deleted everything. But then after I got it back, I started like re-uploading some of my favorite videos.
1 second, hang on. Let me.
Yeah. Originally, it was for third-party content. Oh, am I echoing on your side?
It was me. It was okay. Nothing at all to do with you, bro.
So they demonetized me for third-party content because I used to do this show on YouTube called You Can't Stop Progress, which was just clips. This show we're doing now, the Progress Report, is like the spiritual successor to that show. Because I wanted to keep the memory alive on YouTube, but here we watch the clips, we give commentary and all that, so they don't demonetize me again. But after that, like I deleted everything, and then they started saying hate speech every time I tried to reapply, and I didn't know why but I eventually deleted everything, and then they were like, okay.
They're such a pain in the ass to deal with, dude.
Yeah, I mean it's like they're you could have 1,000 videos and there's one video on there that's stopping you and they could just tell you what it is, but they don't. They're like, I don't know, something's wrong on your channel. Good luck, figure it out. They won't give me my silver play button either now. Now that I have 100K subs, they keep saying, there's something on your channel, content policy. We're not going to give you your silver play button. So
Jay Dyer dealt with that for years too. After he got past the 100K mark, they wouldn't send him his silver plaque, demonetized his channel. He got his monetization back a few months ago as well, a couple months back, which I was real happy to see. I mean, man, it really helps. Like it helps channel creators to have that, not just because of the cash though. That's what's funny. It helps because the algorithm. Yeah. The algorithm punishes you real bad if they demonetize you.
Well, the cash is really nice too, though. I made a couple like salt compilations after the election where it was like libs crying on TikTok, just like threw it together really quick, and I made like $5,000 in December for my YouTube revenue for that month. So I mean that doesn't hurt either.
No, not at all, not at all. Well, I'm glad to hear it, man. I didn't know exactly what the backstory was on that, so I'm glad that's the case for you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was a long 3 years. All right, well, let's just get into the first clip here because we don't have all night. I'm sure Owen will be here soon. Let me pull up the video here. All right. Douglas Murray and Dave Smith on Joe Rogan.
Can I ask you something?
Yes, sir.
Since the war in Israel began and since the war in Ukraine began, you've had quite a lot of people who are very...
Hello, Owen.
Howdy.
We hear you. We hear you. Oh, there we go. And we see you. Awesome. Let me fix this.
We're firing on all cylinders now, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure, man. Our first time doing a little collab together. It'd be nice to hang out, talk a bit.
It's good to finally talk to you, Andrew.
There's a lot of great beards on this panel, Owen. A lot of great beards.
Yeah, the beard show.
I would argue there's no bad beards.
Yeah,
there's only great beards.
Yeah, mine's a little homeless looking at the moment. I have like a Pepsi challenge going with my chat that I'm not going to shave or get a haircut until I'm in halfway decent shape. So I've been trying to do that, but I feel like there's a lot more beard to come. I feel like there's a lot more beard to come.
What do you consider halfway decent shape though?
Well, I mean, let's just start with like no beer gut and go from there. I think that seems fair, right?
Okay. So have you stopped drinking beer though?
Absolutely not. But I've definitely I've definitely hired a personal trainer, and I think we can get rid of the beer gut anyway. You know, I don't drink beer as much. You know, not as much. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There's alternatives here.
Yeah, there's alternatives to it. Like, you know, the
White Claws.
I've been a big vodka and soda guy as well. And also, nice to meet you too. I don't think we've ever actually met.
No, not like this, where we've been able to speak to each other. I've seen your work over the years. I really enjoy your debate style on the Whatever podcast. That's fun.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I caught your last debate with Destiny. That was fun. That was a funny one.
Oh, I didn't see that.
You know, I had to make a bet.
See that? That was what university was that at, dude?
South Carolina, the Gamecocks. You know, it's funny. I made a bet, and I was telling my camera guy who is there traveling with me, I said, hey, look, here's how this is going to go. Because I wasn't sure when I was going to first meet Destiny. I wasn't sure if we were going to be riding in a vehicle together to the event or not. So I didn't actually meet him until the stage. But I told my cameraman, I was like, hey, look, make sure when I first meet him, make sure you're recording, because I'm gonna do like a gentleman's meet and greet, and I'm gonna say hi, and I'm gonna reach out to shake his hand, and I'm betting he's going to reject it, because I didn't want to touch the guy. Obviously,
wait, isn't that what he did on stage? Didn't he do that on stage? Yeah.
So I made a bet, and I was like, I'm praying he's not going to actually touch me, but I'm going to make the bet, and I'm going to extend the hand for the handshake like a gentleman, hoping he's not going to touch me, and, you know, betting that he wasn't. And then that's exactly how it went. So it was too predictable for it's just not even fair.
He's well, it's really funny too when you're up on stage. I looked over at my wife. I was like, "You think they got like a little stool for Destiny to stand up back there?"
There was probably some other stool involved, but not
a little. But you know, he's always, you know, I've debated with him. I don't know how many times, but I've seen him in person a couple of times at various like debate events we've been at, and he really is as small as you think he is. Like, he really is. That's why it's like, it's always ironic, because I'm like, all you got to do is just be an average sized guy, and you dwarf Destiny. It's pretty pretty funny, actually.
There's a lot of things not going his way, but I'm beginning to have this mindset that he actually is like into it, like some sort of a weird masochist that likes getting humiliated. I don't know. I don't know why you would continue to put yourself in a position to be humiliated like he does.
Well, I've heard the released it on purpose because he likes the idea that people can see his stuff, right? Like, he just likes the very idea of that, and so he did a lot of this on purpose. I don't know if that's true, right? It seems a little far-fetched, but I mean, the guy is. That's why I call him the Coomer Gremlin. I mean, he's just the worst, dude. This guy's the worst when it comes to
It'd be a shame if that lawsuit completely ruined him. It'd be a real shame.
Yeah.
Speaking of debates, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this Andrew Doyle, Dave Smith thing from last week here. I'll just play a little clip to remind everybody.
Against both in different ways.
Yes.
Do you think you've had enough people on who are supportive of either war?
I don't know that word enough, if that's a good word.
Let's say enough people who are on the side of Israel instead of wild critics of Israel.
Well, I've had a few. I mean, I believe Godsad is on the side of Israel.
For sure.
Jordan is on the side of Israel.
You had Mike Baker, Coleman Hughes.
Yeah.
Coleman did it for like 20 minutes, so it wasn't why he was here.
No. I mean, none of them. And none of them is why they're here. You know, it's a good question.
Do you think you've tilted one way?
Me personally?
No. Just with the guests you've had.
The guests, yeah, probably more tilted towards the idea that perhaps the way they've done it is barbaric.
Mm-hmm. But why do you think that is? Just out of interest.
Maybe the death toll for women and children. I'm just spitballing here, but maybe the reason a lot of people are a little bit uncomfortable is all the dead women and children that we hear about in the bombed hospitals and churches. Just that sort of general ethnic cleansing vibe. You're doing a Zionism debate, Andrew, or did you do that already? Or I saw something on Twitter.
No, that's coming up. It's coming up with AP, and it's specifically around the idea of if Christians have an ought to be Zionists, So this is what the question is.
The Christian question.
Zionism as a political ideology, I'm sure people can come up with all kinds of various justifications or reasons for why they would want to be. But there's no actual Christian ought that I've been able to discover for, well, this political ideology must be followed because you're a Christian. That's insanity. But it is packaged to many through charismatics and has been for about the last 50 years that there is some kind of ought that that these are the chosen people of God, and therefore Christians put them before Christians, and that is not the case, right? That is just simply not the case. It's bad theology. So that'll be what the debate revolves around, rather than the idea like that Jews are ontologically evil or something silly like this. It's just it's a theological question more than anything.
That should be an easy win.
You know, it's funny, this debate that we're playing the clip of here, it maintains its viral factor even to this day. I think it's been almost 2 weeks. And the one thing that I'm noticing, which is kind of the telltale, because when you do political commentary, I think it's really important to find balance in the perspectives that might be against you. And so you try to find different factors to find out, okay, am I really right about this? Or maybe do I need to open my eyes or open my mind to something else? And so you look for different ways, different factors to do that. And one easy way that you can do it is via social media. You can look at what people are replying and saying to stuff that you say. And so the reason why I point that out about this debate is what we've seen since this debate was, I think it's the most social media damage control operation that has ever been witnessed on X.
It's pretty incredible, isn't it? The expert thing.
It's unbelievable.
Oh, man.
But I mean, what you can do now, you know, the corporate media was always like a silo, and it was always an access chamber. With social media, it's the wild, wild west. So you kind of have to adjust the way you consume it and analyze it. But what really, in my view, and if you guys disagree, I'd like to hear from you. But I mean, in my view, what this has done is it's really drawn a line and confirmed some things that definitely I've been thinking and considering, and maybe you have too, that there's a lot of people on social media who are either just straight up grifters or just outright propagandists. And I think that the line has been drawn in the response to this debate. So all the damage control for Douglas Murray, including whoever paid Donald Trump to post his book, 100%, I'd bet that was a paid post. I'm not even sure if Donald Trump knew about it. Maybe he greenlit it, but that was totally paid.
You mean it's True Social post?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, when I'm watching the damage control to this and everybody's saying, oh, Murray won and all this, well, the consensus is obviously he didn't win. And I think that, the one thing that Murray misses from his perspective, because he's blind to it, he has blinders on, and you could hear it. He says, well, have you ever had anybody that supports Israel on? And it's like, dude, that's not the popular stance right now. No, supporting Israel is not popular. All that you have is people that are either Israelis or Jewish people that obviously support Israel for those reasons, or you just have paid propaganda. And I think that what we're seeing in response to this is the people that are just outright paid propaganda are really exposing themselves. I don't think it's been more obvious, and I try to warn people of this too. And two things can be true. X is the most important app for news, uncensored and truth. It is. But at the same time, I now think X is actually worse for propaganda than even mainstream media is and corporate news media is. I think X is now worse. So I think
that's kind of the price we pay to have a speech platform in a way, though, right? Is that you're going to end up with the shills and the propagandists too. I think your take ultimately here is pretty good. I hadn't contextualized it that way, but I'd kind of leaned something towards that. So here's what I saw. I deconstructed this debate just via the arguments, right? I have an upcoming show where I'm actually going to analyze the full debate. And it without a doubt, Dave Smith won this debate on the merits of arguments. He had the better fold of the arguments. He did a much better job. This guy, he is given credit, Murray, for being a good orator, but I think that has a lot more to do with the accent than the content of the arguments themselves. Smith won the argument, and that's what a debate is about. You can have the wrong position, even the false position, and still win a debate. That is factually correct. In this case, whether you agree with Dave Smith or not on his actual position, he did win. And what happened when they came out and tried to crucify this guy based on the fact that he didn't have expertise, didn't go touch the land himself, didn't go and take a voyage for 3 weeks and go on a tour of the land before he could make commentary on it. It was absolutely ridiculous. And he really, Dave Smith, one thing I'll say that I like about him is he told these critics, he's like, you come on and I'll have the same debate with you and you can justify how these are arguments. How's an argument to say I have to go to the place in question in order to have any type of commentary on the place? And thus far, his critics have not taken him up on that. And you're absolutely right. The amount of damage control has been incredible, but they're not damage controlled with arguments. They're damage controlled with just pure rhetoric. And
it's causing more damage. I would say it's causing more damage.
Yeah, it's just wild to me. So I think that's a pretty good take, actually.
Yeah, I agree too. And, there was also like a week or two ago, there was that whole thing where a bunch of influencers got outed for shilling for Coca-Cola or soda because they were trying to pass a law that you couldn't buy it with SNAP or EBT or whatever. And all these big conservative influencers were like, this is government overreach. Of course you should be able to. And it was all paid posts. And what's funny is they don't disclose that these are sponsored posts because I think they're afraid it's going to like cause their credibility. But I think a lot of people actually like wouldn't care that much if you just put like hashtag ad or whatever. But by not disclosing it and then getting caught, then you really do hurt your credibility.
Are you talking about those propaganda posts where they were like, they're gonna take food stamps, take the ability to get pop away from people?
Yeah, the government can't tell me what to spend
my
welfare money on.
Which, by the way, I remember seeing those posts and I was like, conservatives in the 90s, they used to argue like, you're not going to go and get lobster and steak with food stamps. That's not what it's for. It's there to help give you like, kind of a boost.
Yeah, rice and potatoes
or something like that.
Yeah.
But we're not here to give you filet mignon. You remember that? Like, that's what conservatives were talking about in the 90s and in the early 2000s. And now they're going to fight for your right to die on the soda of your choice with food stamps. Like, what world are we living in? You know what I mean? It was obvious that that was all propaganda, but it was nice that it got pointed out that it was paid.
Yeah, and this is what I'm talking about on X, and I'm telling you, it's everywhere. A lot of the money that used to go into mainstream media, political money for marketing or ads or propaganda, it's all pouring into X. And I mean, I've got a pretty good idea of it. I've been introduced to it. I've been offered it, and I know pretty well how it works. And that what you guys are talking about is kind of that's more of a obvious operation where. The one difference between the left and the right when they do their propaganda campaigns, the left will literally just copy and paste. And so you can actually see how they literally just copy and paste the exact same thing or read off the exact same thing. With conservatives, they kind of twist it up a little bit and massage it a little bit so that all the messages look a little bit different, but ultimately say the same thing. But yeah, these are paid for operations. It's all over political commentary now. It's all over X now. And you really have to be mindful and discerning, trying to figure out, okay, what is paid for propaganda or what is just organic discussion and commentary, because you can easily be fooled by this stuff. But you know what? It's actually healthy, I think, too. It's actually healthy to stay alert like that, because that's kind of what it takes to live in a republic. You have to be an active, engaged, and informed citizen. And the lack of that is really why the republic is in such a dark state, I think, today.
It's almost like it's an info war, right? Quite literally.
Yeah,
it's almost like it's an info war.
It's almost like
true,
I've been trained. It's like I've been trained in the info war.
Trained in it, exactly. And the whole thing is so interesting about it is, and I say this often, in the age of information, when all warfare is based around information, and now it is, in modernity, the war on the ground between the left and the right is based around information, misinformation, propagandists, non-propagandists. Debate is a powerful weapon. It's a very, very powerful weapon. And so you're seeing a comeback of debate whereas it had died out, kind of a few years back, and it's making its resurgence because of how good this precision weapon can be in the hands of the right orator. And the fact that a guy like Dave Smith, who, he's a comic, and I often will kind of posit that socially comics do more to change social views of people than think tanks and NGOs and all of them kind of combined, because they can make commentary that you are thinking, right, but don't dare say, and it puts it out in the ethos. And it's always been kind of a traditionally safe way to put it out in the ethos, and we need more of that, right? But the fact that comics are viewed as morons, because the left has been pushing like the Amy Schumers and the gross Chelsea Handlers and people like this, I think they have another thing coming if there's a resurgence of right-wing media in comedy, especially for social change, because, man, it's super effective. And Mama didn't raise no dummies. So it's interesting to watch how this is playing out.
Yeah. Let's see what.
Back to the thing that kind of started this, and I know you got a bunch of clips we want to go over. And to me, this is where the two things where Murray really lost the debate. If you don't want to argue that Dave Smith won it, then Murray certainly lost it himself. And Smith kind of even added that in to some of his follow-up interviews as well. He kind of mentioned that. But the expert saying you have to be an expert, that's dead and gone. That's dead and gone. That's been dead and gone. Probably since 2016 when Trump won the election, but definitely after 2020 when the whole COVID scam went down. But this idea where he says, and I'm okay actually when he says this, I'm like, okay, let's go with that logic then. Let's stick to your logic where since Dave Smith has not been to Israel, therefore he cannot comment on the situation there. I'd go all in. I'd say, okay, Douglas Murray, okay, I'm going to go all in on that logic. You haven't been there, you can't comment on it, then great. I've never been there, so I can't fund it either. And I would say the vast majority of Americans have not been to Israel, probably more than 90%, maybe 95%. These numbers could even be low. It could be 99%. Have not been or want to go to Israel, and therefore America should not fund it and should not get involved in any of its foreign policies or foreign conflicts. So to that degree, I say, Douglas, you are right. We can't talk about it, and we can't fund it either. But I wonder how their attitude.
Never been to a vaccine lab. I've never been to a vaccine lab either. So I guess that means what? Can't take the vax, right? Can't take any vaccine.
Can't comment on it either.
Yeah, I can't comment on it.
Like, hey, well, you can't. He says you can't time travel. It's like, okay, but your logic doesn't change.
Exactly.
The logic doesn't change. The logic remains the same. If you haven't been there, you can't comment on it. It doesn't matter if time travel exists or not.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was absurd. It was one of the most absurd things I'd ever heard. But he really doubled down on that for a while, didn't he? He really did. And he couldn't seem to get himself out of the weeds. He could have made a simple concession there even and said, look, okay, I'm speaking in generalities. I just think it's better. Not that you can't have expertise in a matter, even if you haven't physically been there. He could have retracted it and still made himself look good, but he doubled down. He just doubled down on it and wouldn't let it go. And I was like, man, that was it was just a silly hole to dig himself and jump into,
And it just shows how hard it is. I mean, look, in Murray's defense, it's really hard to defend that war. It really is hard to defend Israel right now. And I can understand it because I talk to plenty of Jewish people that are even Zionists. And when they want to defend it and they talk about it, I can understand that. It's like, okay, you have ties to that region. You have family in the region. You've lived there before. It's like from that perspective, that hatred, that vitriol, the war that's been going on forever. It's like, okay, from your standpoint, I understand why you have emotionally attached yourself to Israel and to whatever they're doing in the Gaza Strip. However, I'm an American. And right. So it shouldn't concern me. It shouldn't have to concern me. And I shouldn't be condemned if I have an alternative or different opinion on the matter. So I think Murray was really in a position to lose it from the very beginning, because if you're not Jewish or you're not an Israeli, defending the merits of what Israel's doing in the Gaza Strip is it's almost impossible to do.
Well, and there's another kind of overlaid truth here that people don't talk about often, and I want to get both your guys' take on this. I think honestly that for the average American, they're so sick and fatigued of Middle Eastern war nonsense. I think that the average American would actually rather hear about who lost the big game this week than anything about Israel and Palestine. I think they're sick of it. I think they don't give nearly as much of a shit as many people think they do. And they would rather just disconnect themselves from this entire region altogether if they could. They're just tired of it. And I mean, how long have we been hearing about Middle Eastern wars? My entire adult life. It's never stopped, you know? Post 9/11, it's just never stopped. And so I think there's a sense of fatigue the American public have too, where they're like, we're just sick of this whole region. Right? We're just tired of this whole region. We're sick of it. Enough of them.
Yes. You guys are too good at talking. We're never going to make it through all these clips. That's okay. We don't have to make
I'm
it.
just trying to shut up now. Now the challenge is
we don't have to make it through all of them, but let's try for number 2 here.
So today is my last day of maternity leave, and I go back to work tomorrow. And I just feel like I haven't had enough time with them. I know I got longer than a lot of women get with 3 months, but it just doesn't, I just don't feel ready. I had a very high risk pregnancy because they shared a placenta. They were 5.5 weeks premature. We were in the NICU for several weeks, so you kind of feel a little robbed of that postpartum experience, and that does not get accounted into your maternity leave. It's just like such an abrupt change that you're with your babies all the time, and then you pick them up from daycare and you might just get a few hours. I just felt like so disconnected to them. Sorry, I'm gonna get emotional. I would just like cry, like they're gonna forget me. Or I would come home from work and like feel like they forgot me because they didn't like smile right away when they saw me. And I know they like didn't, but it's really hard to convince yourself that they don't. I also love my career. I am proud of what I do, but there's always
What
that
does she
mom
do?
guilt.
What
does she do? Anybody know?
I don't
Is she a
know.
barista? Like, what does she do?
No, it's got to be something a little more demanding and high status than that, I imagine. But this clip went like really viral last week because everybody has opinions on should women be working, should there be more maternity leave, these kind of things. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Well, this is like total vindication for every manosphere talking point ever made, right? The idea here is just, look, if you split your attention as a mother between children and job, something's going to suffer. You can't have it all. You can't have your cake and eat it too. By the age of 18, you have spent 90% plus of all the time you're ever going to spend with that kid by the time they're 18
Right.
years old. And it's like, why would you ever give that up for any job ever? Why are we wasting our best and brightest women in cubicles when we should be having them raise the next generation of really smart kids? It's backwards. The whole thing is backwards. What she's going through is really, it's an actual serious problem. And I feel terrible that feminism in society has created, mostly at the behest of women, though, has created the conditionals for this to happen at all. Of course, she should be able to stay home for the next, 7-8 years in order to give the type of maternal love that is necessary instead of outsourcing to a daycare. Socially, that's going to be better for society too, right? But it's completely flipped upside down where the corporate media and every university on planet Earth has told women that the pathway to empowerment is through education and through career. And so they try to build these social safety nets for themselves in case they ever have to leave hubby because they don't feel like they're, being emotionally taken care of anymore, whatever the hell that means. And so they do. They end up sacrificing this beautiful thing that they could have had for nothing, ultimately for nothing, for a career usually serving another man besides their husband. It's insanity.
I would say the one realization, not just her in this video, I think maybe, but a lot of women we're seeing too, it's trending that they realize at least the latest waves of feminism were a total scam. And they're not buying into it anymore. If anything, they're kind of turning against it. But I look at this woman specifically, whatever her career is, maybe it's very rewarding work and she likes doing it, I'm sure. But I doubt there was ever an instance where she was drawn to tears because she couldn't go to work. And yet here she is drawn to tears because she's going to have to be separated from her children on a daily basis to go back to her job. But, you know, we can kind of get into the feminist angles of this. And I think you did a pretty good job there, Andrew. I would look at this, too, from a economic perspective, because I think that's probably the biggest driving force at this point. I think most women would prefer to stay home with their children. Most, not all.
Not sure.
Would prefer to stay home, but maybe they just simply can't. Maybe for financial reasons or whatever, mortgage payments, car payments that they have, they feel that they have to go there for the financial reasons. So I think this has been done not just to women intentionally with the feminist movement, but I think with our economy. You know, we used to have an economy where a father could go to work and provide for his family and own a home, own a working vehicle, take a vacation every year, and have a little bit in savings or an emergency fund. And that is just not the case for most Americans now. So I think it's really what's been done to our economy at this point, more so than the culture of feminism, that's putting women in these positions where they're upset because they have to go back to work.
I think you're right for low status jobs. I think for the women who have like the higher status jobs though, like lawyers and academics and people like that, they probably, I mean, a lot of those people don't even have kids nowadays because they're so dedicated to their careers. So I'm
women
not
don't
sure.
really have those jobs anyway. When you're talking about the high echelon jobs for women, there's the high echelon jobs for men. Most women are working in the same capacity they were at the turn of the century. They're working in healthcare, they're working in the service industry, and they're working at schools, right? They're doing the exact same things they've always been. If you look at the top 5 jobs from 1900 for women, top 5 jobs now for women, exactly the same. Nothing on the planet has changed in that regard. Also, it can't just be an economic factor. I used to think the same thing. That logically follows, right? You need to have 2 incomes in order to maintain a household, this and that, except the poor are the ones who have all the damn kids. The middle class doesn't, right? And the upper class doesn't. So it seems to be a materialism problem.
That's out of idiocracy.
And a religious problem more than it is anything else, right? It's an attachment to materialism. Truth is that a lot of people don't want to give up anything for kids. So what they do is they do long-term family planning, and they do long-term planning out of college. They're not getting married till they're in their 30s. The average age for marriage now, I think, in the United States is between 28 and 30, right? It's projected to be at 32 in the next decade. It's like, that's crazy, right? No, I'm sorry, that's childbirth. Marriage itself, I think, already is in the 30s. And childbirth, average age for childbirth is 28, which is insane, right? That's an insane stat. So if you're putting it off, it's purely due to material ideas of, I'm not going to retract anything in my life. I don't know about you. My parents often made sacrifice on behalf of us, right? Their children, they had many children. We didn't always have kind of like the best and brightest toys or the newest toys or stuff like that, but we got along okay. But now people aren't making that sacrifice. They want to have all of it. They want to have the keeping up with the Joneses lifestyle and the children at the same time. And that's not usually compatible. You got to make changes in your life in order to accommodate the children who now become the priority.
Yeah, they want to travel. They want to do it all. All right, let's see what else we got here.
You're not giving enough time to your kids.
All right, so the Minecraft chicken jockey phenomenon. I'm assuming you guys have heard of this. I don't know if you had any thoughts on it.
I haven't seen it yet. Can you replay those?
So I don't know what the context of it is. I know what's happening is these kids are going to the movie theater to watch the new Minecraft movie, and when Jack Black says the line of chicken jockey, they just go absolutely bat crap crazy.
Right.
I think it's a pretty fun, innocent prank. Quite frankly, I'd say overall it seems like it's been pretty fun and innocent. I could easily see myself at high school getting involved in something like that and filming it just for kicks. Now, if I went to the theater with like my family or something and that happened, I might be a little less patient and upset that this was going on. But mostly, you know what, I'd say it's probably a fun, innocent prank, and it's bringing back movie theater culture, which I'm a little nostalgic about too. But what I don't understand is like, what is the source? Like, what is the origin story of the chicken jockey phenomenon? Is it like a Minecraft thing, or is it like a social media thing? I don't know how it started.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you, man. That's an interesting question. Maybe the whole thing is a psyop. Maybe
We're like boomers now.
Yeah, no, I felt the same way. At first I was a little bit like, oh, this is sort of uncivilized, but then I said, you know what, let the kids have their fun, whatever. There's so little like community fun things that happen like that now. Everyone's so, so yeah, I think I like it. I came around on it.
I mean, we were all retards when we were teenagers too and did retarded shit like that. So, it's like, no, it's not a huge deal, maybe.
Yeah. Wouldn't want to have to be the guy cleaning the feeders, but
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It could maybe help. That would be
I
nice.
probably watched pornography first when I was maybe 11. And so I've always known about it. I've always knew it was a thing. And I always thought it was very normal to watch.
Right. But if you started watching it at 11,
Yeah.
I mean, that is so young.
Yeah.
And you say it's normal. Can you describe how it has influenced you and your brain and your outlook on sex?
You know what? It actually made me really sex confident and learn a lot of things. I mean, that's mostly how I learned through pornography. And I do think it has a positive effect on me, just in terms of like understanding things a little bit more.
Right. But as we know, what we see in pornography online can be extreme. Is not normal.
It depends what type of pornography you're watching. That's what I would say.
Okay. And when you look back and reflect on the fact that you had access to this pornography and were looking at it from the age of 11, and not just you, any Gen Z who's got a smartphone.
Yeah.
Does that suggest to you that maybe your generation has been let down by politicians or the tech companies or even parents?
I think it's hard because sex is a part of life, and I don't.
But
think
not when you're 11.
Well, I think you should be learning from it from that age. I do believe that, because that's when you start to think about things like that.
But learning,
maybe not
via
learning,
pornography?
Yeah, maybe not learning from pornography, but I do think understanding it more from that age would be helpful.
Is there a direct link between you watching pornography as you grew up and the decisions you've made to do what you do now?
I think maybe. I mean, I don't know a life without pornography, so maybe.
Now, I've debated with Miss Thousand Cock Stare there.
On whatever?
Yeah, yep. And here's the thing I'll say, right? Before anybody takes anything that she says seriously, she's a chronic liar. She just chronically lies almost like every other sentence. It's very difficult to believe anything that she says because this is part of her media training that she gets from kind of her handlers and that's why she bombs so badly in these interviews and says outrageous things. It's not because she actually believes them. It's because she doesn't know what to believe. She does this purely from a position of drawing media attention to the fact that, she'll bang 500 guys in a day or whatever it is. So, yeah, I just simply don't believe a word that this woman says ever. I just don't believe it.
Yeah. This girl is constantly popping up on my social media, and I guess she has like a twin or something. There's like two of them that are in this competition where they're, trying to have as much public sex as they possibly can. I don't know. Is it an OnlyFans thing? I mean, I'm sure they're making money doing it. What I find, because look, I'm kind of more of a social libertarian type, like live and let live. And I just don't even care. It's whatever. If you're an adult, you want to do that with your life, that's fine. But then you got to always kind of land back on, you got to think about the kids. You got to leave the kids alone. My concern is forget about whatever she's saying. Let's say she's making it up about she was 11 years old or all this other crap, everything she else. I think Andrew's probably right on. He has talked to her before. So let's say she's just making all of that up. Well, she is talking to young girls. And if this stuff is popping up on my social media feed, I'm sure it's popping up all over theirs too. And so I'm just curious, adult entertainment industry aspect aside, are girls consuming this stuff and thinking it's a rewarding lifestyle? Are they consuming this stuff thinking that this is a life path that they might want to go down? I mean, that's my concern.
Have you seen the latest stats on that, Owen? They're saying it's going to be somewhere between 1 in 10 Gen Z
I think
women.
I think it was Pearl Davis. It might have been Pearl Davis that did a statistical breakdown of that. The numbers were quite alarming. I think whatever the numbers were, you said 1 in 10. Whatever they were extremely alarming. I was almost in disbelief. I was like, there's just no way.
Well, the thing is like it's real easy money from their perspective. And now here's the thing. On average, an OnlyFans content creator makes jack, right? So they end up showing their butthole on the internet for very little reward. And you would think that would be a deterrent, but it's not, because they all want to have kind of that breakout. The other gal you're talking about is Bonnie Blue. Not a twin sister of Lily Phillips, but somebody who has done the exact same thing. She's just the a different UK version, essentially, of her in this competition for who can reach the maximum threshold of degeneracy first. And they actually collaborate in order to do this, and it's pushed. There's a calculated push behind it. Now, I've gotten both of these women to admit that if it was legal for them to have sex with dead bodies and they could make money from it, they would do that. I've gotten them to admit that live on camera through just logical analysis. These women are just horrific liars, and they're basically only doing this for the purposes of drawing maximum attention to their various OF channels so that they can generate as much buzz and revenue as possible. I asked this woman who we just saw, look, after all this is settled, right, there's only so far you can go with the degeneracy. After you do 1,000 guys in a day, like, what's left? Where are you going from there? You know what I mean? What are you gonna give skydiving blowjobs? Like, what's the next big publicity stunt? And she's like, well, we have ideas. And it's like that. And that's exactly what it is. It's just all ideas to generate publicity, to then generate capital for her. Most of these guys who show up, they're masked, right? You can't even prove the numbers. Ultimately, it's like, dude,
I try not to even get emotionally involved in any of it. But I see the people like, who do you blame, the guys or the girls? Again, I'm just like, look, if you're a guy doing that, you know what? I don't know. Maybe you got something else going on. You got other problems going on that you think that that's something you want to engage in. Whatever. I would never do that. I would never encourage something like that. I remember seeing one of them or both of them. It might have actually been on that podcast that you were on. And there was something that stuck out to me where they were like trying to out-slut one another. Yes. And it was like a back and forth. Was that on that podcast with you?
It wasn't on that particular podcast, but I'm aware of the one that you're discussing. And they will often do that, right? Once one of the degens decides, hey, there's some kind of pop-off happening here, all of the other degens get in line like little
that was mind-blowing. That was mind-blowing to me, because I'm not acting like I was some sort of a square in high school, and I had plenty of fun, but like that was like the opposite. I mean, I'm 35 years old. I graduated high school in 2008. If I was hanging around with, like, let's say college girls back then or high school girls, and there was some issue about a girl having an affair with someone else's boyfriend, or whatever, that was like slut shaming. It was like slut shaming was the cultural thing back then. Now it's like slut competitions. I can't even imagine, man.
Yeah, it's a way. And leftists do this often, where they try to redefine or capture stigmatic words and try to utilize them against the right. And this is what's happening here. It's an attempt to reverse stigma. So slut shaming is good socially. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? Promiscuity in society is terrible for society. It's always been terrible for society. And whether you want government intervention or not, as you said you didn't, socially, it's still good for society not to be promiscuous for all sorts of reasons that are very obvious to people. And stigma is a very good assistant tool in stopping a lot of that behavior. And so most all of this push is designed specifically to try to reverse stigma and instead put the stigma back the other direction. Say, no. Even if you think slut shaming's good, you should be stigmatized. If you think that promiscuity is bad, you should be stigmatized. You're the weirdo. You're the freak, right? They do this all the time. We saw this with the trans movement. It's the same exact thing, right? If you were a person who said, I'm not going to use your crazy ass pronouns and all your bizarre bullshit, it'd be like, what are you, some kind of psychopath? You just want to erase an entire people group, right? The entire thing is always to try to do a reversal of social stigma so that maximum degeneracy can take hold. That's exactly what these women do. They're not acting their own accord. They're part of organizations which push them also with various talking points before they go on many of these shows. And that's why when they move off the script, they bomb so badly. They don't have a thought in their head. Their job is to get paid, and their business is a booming.
Well, it's the oldest profession in the book, as they say. But I guess it's reaching new heights. The one thing I would wonder is from the male side of this. Do you think there's ever a time in the history of mankind, whether the number's 1,000 or 500 or 100, whatever, she might be fabricating the numbers. Was there ever a time where you would line up and just gleefully, after 10 men, have sex with the same woman lying there? I mean, there's no way. I refuse to believe that's
it's not a thing.
I think the porn has had this sort of deleterious effect on young people. And I wanted to ask you about this, Andrew, because, she's on there on the BBC saying that porn had a positive effect on her life, which I thought
she was 11.
Right.
Since she was 11
seems patently insane. Right. But then you have to think, well, there's also a conflict of interest there. Like, that's what she does. She can't go out there and be like, oh, porn's really bad, you shouldn't look at it, it'll fuck up your life, because that's how she gets paid. And then when I think about that, then I almost start to think like, oh, maybe BBC shouldn't be like bringing her on at all. And people say the same thing about whatever podcast, which is what I want to ask you, is that people will say, oh, well, this is actually doing more harm than good now, giving these women these platforms. I'm sure you don't agree with that, but I'd just like to hear what you would say to somebody who puts that to you.
It's a terrible criticism. And here's why it's a terrible criticism. One, sunlight is the best disinfectant. A lot of times, so there's a huge, what you would consider normie audience who tunes into the whatever podcast, because the dating podcast and intersexual dynamics in Generation M, Millennial, and Generation Z for Zoomer are completely confused. These are the most sexually confused generations which have ever existed on planet Earth. So dating podcasts, things like this are vastly popular. People tune in. They're trying to get some kind of take that makes sense or some kind of insight that actually makes sense. Only 15% of the total amount of people who've ever been on whatever podcast were sex workers of some kind. However, because sex work is now so prominent, that's actually going to be something which is encountered in modern day dating, and often. The chances that you're going to go on 50 dates with 50 different women trying to find Mrs. Right, there's actually a good chance you're going to run into somebody who's a former OF worker or currently is, or a sex worker of some type. So like sunlight's always been the best disinfectant. The idea there is, but wait a second, don't they go on there to try to plug their Instagram as a funnel towards OF? Well, here's the truth. The truth is, if you're a degenerate looking for that kind of content,
it's not
regardless of them going on whatever or not, you're going to find that content. Whatever definitely isn't going to catapult their career forward that way, but it at least gives us an opportunity to tangle with the ideology, put some sunlight on it, and try to disinfect it and challenge it. Whereas most of the podcasts they go on, it's glorified. Take Adam 22, for instance, many of these other very popular podcasts. They could just, if there was nobody to challenge them, They can just do a circuit and promote it everywhere without a single ounce of pushback.
You're right, exactly. That is good about whatever, that they bring people like you and Michael Knowles on and whoever, and you do push back, because like even a lot of these intellectuals or whatever wannabe intellectuals, like I know Lex Friedman did one with Ayala. And he did not, he wasn't like, do you ever think maybe you shouldn't do this kind of thing? Like, it's very, fascinating. Tell me about.
Lex Friedman stayed neutral. Lex Friedman stayed
yeah, I know. Shocker, right?
I'm stunned. Who could have predicted?
But yeah, there has to be somewhere where there's a sane voice, which is able to also give the sane take to the insane so people can see the contrast. Could there be a small social side effect of that where some men could possibly be funneled even to these OF through the good intentions of whatever? Sure, it's possible. But you can make the same statement with companies like InfoWars and say, could that possibly inspire, out of the millions of people who are watching, one crazy person do a crazy thing? Yeah, it's possible, right? But where does that responsibility ultimately lie? Not on the people who are trying to give the expose and put the sunlight on the actual problem. It lies on the end user, and it always has, by the way. It always has.
Well, and I would also say that based off of her success level, which she's probably one of the top earners on that site, I would imagine. I mean, I see her all the time. I don't know if there's any other adult film industry people that I would be like, oh yeah, I know that person is in that industry. Because I've actually had people that just watch my show on InfoWars reach out to me that are in the industry, and they're like, hey, do you ever seen this or that? I'm like, no, I don't know who that is. And they're kind of shocked by it. I'm like, sorry. Once I got out of high school, I kind of got out of that phase. But the reason I say that is even in this work, which we would kind of demean, and rightfully so, in all lines of work, in order to be the most successful, you do have to have some level of skill or understanding of what you're doing. So what I'm trying to say is she obviously has awareness about who she is and about what she's doing. And so the reason why I say that is when they essentially banned porn websites in Texas, because now you have to get some like internet ID thing to log on to these sites. So all of the main domain hosting sites for these porn sites pulled out. And they said, if you're going to do ID verification, we're pulling out of Texas. So you can't even go to these sites anymore based off of these internet ID, these digital ID laws here. So all the porn sites pulled out of Texas. You can't even go there anymore. And why would they do that? Because what they found, and I talked to whistleblowers who went undercover at Pornhub, and they know
trafficking, right?
Trafficking, but most of their users are minors.
Yeah.
Most of their users are minors, which I wouldn't be necessarily surprised by that. Cause like I said, I don't know. It's different for all people. I'm not judging anybody. In high school, I was curious about that stuff. I was watching that stuff. Once I grew up, you kind of move on, or once you get a girlfriend or whatever, you kind of just get over it. At least that was my experience. But the point is, I'm saying she obviously knows that minors are a target demographic. And I think that that's what we're seeing here. And that's why she's talking about 11 years old. And that's why she's going on these podcasts. She's not doing that to attract a 30-year-old man, a 40-year-old man or above. That's not why she's doing that. She's doing that to attract minors, younger people to her content. So in that regard, there's probably a reason why she's so well known, because she's very aware of the market. She's very aware how to tap into it. She's very aware how to profit off of it. And that's probably why she's successful.
Well, I think that a lot of that analysis is correct. One kind of small quibble I have. I think you are right that it used to be the case that, especially in podcasting or skilled broadcasting, it did take a significant amount of skill. Back when, Jones and Limbaugh and Michael Savage and all these different guys were becoming the voice of right-wing radio. That took a significant amount of skill to carry an entire audience with your voice alone for hours a day. Took significant skill. Now, though, in the modern age, I'm not so sure how much skill it takes for Hawk Tua to go, yeah, Hawk Tua on it. right? And the next thing you know, she's got a fucking coin and she fleeces people for millions of dollars and disappears in the
organic though. Do you think that was organic?
But that's what I mean, right? I don't think it was organic, but I also don't think she had any skill. But I do think that she was still able to catapult with zero skill, zero ability behind the mic, nothing, into a place of very quickly prominence, because you can be pushed by external forces which bring you up where you really don't belong. So I guess I agree with you in merit that it used to be a skill-based game, but now when I look at like the case of the Hawk Tuah, I look at the case of Lily Phillips, this chick, these are brainless, complete morons. They have no business. They're not even entertaining. They're not even fun to watch. You know, at least if you're going to be pristinely untalented, then be a fucking clown and dance, right? But they're not doing any of that, and yet still are able to be catapulted. And it's just like, what is going on? I can't
disagree. Well, I can't disagree with that. The Hawk Tuah example is kind of that's an undeniable proof of what you're saying. The only thing I guess that would maybe determine whether or not that's Lily Phillips or not is the test of time. I mean, Hawk Tuah is done. I mean, I don't think she has a career in social media or anything after that rug pull. I don't know. She might even be being criminally investigated. I haven't really followed up on that, but I mean,
we can only hope.
They cleared her.
That was one of the biggest scams I've ever seen in.
They cleared her
life.
Already. The SEC said they weren't going to pursue any charges or anything.
I think that's just the crypto world is kind of the wild, wild west of that stuff. So people know they can still get away with that. But you know, you mentioned Rush Limbaugh. He was warning about this for decades, especially once social media started to take. Rush Limbaugh was warning about how people were going to be able to get a voice and get an audience that really didn't deserve it or should never have it because of phenomenons like this. And he ended up being totally right. You can definitely enter and get success a lot more easier than before. But I think now now it's going to be the test of time more so than anything, because the depth charts are like, I mean, you can constantly rearrange the depth charts as far as media talent is concerned. You know, I came from sports media, and one thing you learn pretty quick in sports media is if you want to be a broadcaster in sports media, or specifically, I was even doing play-by-play, the same people that our parents grew up listening to are still on air today. They don't leave their posts. It is almost impossible to climb the ladder of sports media and to get a level of success. Now, with social media, you can kind of tap into it and be successful. But I mean, as far as like getting the big gigs, the big network gigs, play-by-play gigs, these people stay in these jobs for 40, 50 years. So, I mean, that's like, you can't even tap into that stuff. But now I think in political commentary, I mean, you see it, man. The depth chart, the talent, I mean, it's constantly like new people rising, falling. It's all, it's all over the map. Social media has certainly opened.
Isn't there something to be said with the fact that right now this is the final frontier when it comes to broadcasting and journalism and everything else? We don't know the rules yet, right? For the citizen broadcaster, the rules are not even clear with the tech companies. Like we were just having this discussion before we even went live, where he was talking about how YouTube won't even tell him which video is problematic if a video is problematic. People don't actually know how to govern this sphere yet. Whereas in broadcasting circles, broadcasting is a very old art. I mean, especially old radio. And there was good rules established kind of clear up through the 60s, 70s, and by the 80s and 90s, man, it was like a science. These guys had it down to a science. Here, though, in the modern media age, where just an average citizen can grab a microphone, pop on YouTube, and with just a bit of charisma and the right facts can launch into prominence, though still rare, admittedly, though still rare. I'm not sure that we know what the rules are, and I'm not even sure that you can make a prediction for what the future holds. I agree with you. There's a rise and fall of a different e-celeb seemingly every other week, right? But the fact that so many pristinely untalented people can launch to the top of the charts so quickly is mind-boggling to me, and I have no explanation for it.
Lex Friedman.
Yeah.
I had something in my throat there, man.
All right, you guys, got it out. Glad you got it out.
Yeah, it was bothering me. I didn't want to disrupt you, but it was causing an issue here.
Let's move on to the next clip here. This was Kevin O'Leary talking about tariffs on China. This one went viral on Twitter last week.
104% tariffs on China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, and sell it back here. Never has an administration.
400% tariffs? What would that look like?
Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. This is not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed. If we wipe out any business there, because we are still 39% of all consumables on Earth and 25% of the world's GDP, America is the #1 economy on Earth with all the cards. We will not have that forever. It's time to squeeze Chinese heads into the wall now.
Well,
I'm
hold
not
on
talking
a
about
second,
tariffs.
Kevin. Well, I hear you, but hold on. If we're talking about people, the average consumer, not necessarily the head honchos of businesses all across the globe, can they withstand the pressure of that sort of tax on the goods?
It's short-lived. There will be.
Yes.
But what's your timeline compared to, you don't know the average American's timeline, what they can actually survive. There's people right now who can't survive
400% tomorrow morning, cheese on an airplane to Washington.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny, these leftists, whenever we bring up the conversation of tariffs, they always want to talk about how it rises the price in America, which is not necessarily untrue, but it's funny how they never say the same thing about the taxes that they promote.
Yeah, especially the corporate tax under Kamala. Remember that?
They never reach the same conclusion about their Green New Deal taxes, their climate taxes, their all these other taxes that they enforce on the American people, which by design are meant to price out the poor. They are by design meant to only give access to the rich. And New York and California are the perfect examples of this. And so it just shows how on every level, but specifically with this conversation on economy and finance, everything the left does is total reverse reality. So when they propose a tax, whether it's on you, the consumer, or the corporation, they never say, hey, this is going to raise prices. This is going to make it harder for the little guy. They never say that.
No, they just talk about how much government revenue they're going to get.
But come into their head, it wouldn't leave their mouth. But when it's tariffs, now we want to talk about the consumer end. Now we want to talk about pricing people out. Oh, okay, I see.
Very valid point. I mean, you're talking about any time they say, okay, we're going to let the Trump tax cuts expire, right? Under Kamala Harris, for instance, would be a massive increase in prices from corporations. The very same corporations are now concerned are going to raise prices based on tariffs, right? It's like, for some reason, though, under their economic model for revenue, that was fine. Under Trump's, it's not, even though under Trump's model, at the very least, we get to offset these massive trade deficits with an adversarial nation. And on top of that, the 400%, he's actually absolutely right here. When it comes to China can sue a corporation inside of the United States, and that corporation is going to court. They're going to court. They're going to have to pay the expenses for it. They're going to have to deal with all of that. Good luck trying to sue a Chinese corporation. They don't give a shit. They don't care. They're not going to make their own corporate bodies go to court. They're not going to make them answer to the theft of ideas, the theft of public goods. They don't make them answer for anything. They completely cheat. They completely lie. It's been a long time coming that we need to have this trade war. General Electric has had just product after product after product which has been ripped off intellectual product by the Chinese, remanufactured into a cheaper, shittier version of whatever the product actually was in order to destroy an American company, right? This happens time and time and time again, and they don't answer to the lawsuits. You can't sue them. Show me where they're getting sued and showing up for court. They don't do it. And so fundamentally, it is a completely uneven playing field. And they're right. It's time. And part of the patriotic duty of America in this trade war is to fucking win it. And you only got to win it once. He's right. You just got to cripple their economy once. You bring them to their knees, and man, they come to the parlay table real quick when that happens. Yeah. And we can do it. We're the one nation that can do it. And these leftists want to hamstring you so that you can get like, your fucking Velcro, fanny pack or whatever the hell it is that you want on Amazon for $5 instead of $7. Like, fuck you. It's time we won this thing.
Yeah. And I think, this is probably Trump's strongest. This is where Trump is his best, quite frankly, is with global trade and economy and finance. This is by far Trump's strongest aspect of what he does as the president. And while maybe he can't do what O'Leary is talking about with the 400% for other give and take that he's doing right now at the negotiating table, the direction is 100% right. And by the way, we're now finding out too, because China is kind of freaking out and they're pumping a bunch of propaganda onto social media as well. And I don't know where this is designed to cause pain, but they're like, hey, by the way, all of your luxury brands that you think are coming from Europe, they're actually made in China too. Ha ha. We make the product in China. We send it to Europe to put a tag on it, and that's it. So I don't know where that's aimed, but this is some of the stuff that's coming out of China right now.
This is great. Yeah.
Trade war.
Well, think about this, right? Actually, they're making the greatest case in the world for why it is we slap tariffs on Mexico and Canada. So you didn't have a backdoor into the U.S. economy by doing just that. Oh, great. The United States is going to put a 9,000% tariff on Chinese goods. And they go, oh, okay, but that's fine because we have a free trade agreement with Canada. So we'll send the goods into Canada, right, for next to nothing, avoid the tariff, and then Canada will sell it free and clear with the United States. And that's exactly what they're admitting to doing with Europe. And this is what he means by not playing by the rules. They go, oh, okay, screw it. We'll bypass your tariffs by sending it to Europe, and we'll take advantage of your free trade agreement or your lesser tariff agreement with them. That's why you have to do large tariff increases across the board. And it's totally justified. And these people pretend like it's not. It's like, how else could you even do it?
Yeah, I heard they do it with
China pumps their currency nonstop. And so their economy is really paper mache right now. And if Trump forced them into a situation where they are now looking to import things, they would be crushed. There'd be scarcity. It'd be unaffordable, and they would be crushed. And I don't think Trump necessarily wants to crush the Chinese people worse than they already are under the foot of the communists. I think Trump is, like you said, he's just trying to win this trade war. And again, it's another lie from the media. Oh, Trump's starting a trade war. The trade war has been going on against the United States of America for our entire lives. The trade war has been against us. No president has stood up to try to help us or fight back until President Trump. Why do you think the companies go to China? Because it's more profitable for them to be there. Change that situation, make it more profitable to be here, the entire global economy shifts.
Yeah, and don't tell me that the tariffs weren't effective either when Biden kept a good majority of them in place for exactly that same reason, and then had to pass the CHIPS Act because the intelligentsia went to him and were like, look, if these people continue to make key components in our weapon systems, we're going to have a big problem in the future, right? We're going to have a big problem in the future. We got to do something about this immediately. So it's like, look, it's very obvious what's going on, that these people can bypass any of the tariffs that we put against them by having free trade agreements with other nations that then make reciprocal trade agreements with them. People, for some reason, forget that aspect, and it's so important here. And it's like, you have to win this trade war. And part of that, unfortunately, is going to be like, well, sorry, UK, 30% increase for you too, unless you go all in with us and put a 100 or 200% tariff on China as well, then we can drop our tariffs on you. That's what the whole point of this negotiation is about.
And by the way,
I want to get your guys'
undercovered story. Let me say one more thing. There's a very undercovered story right here. Xi Jinping is going to every country in Asia right now, begging them not to do a deal with Donald Trump. It's not really being reported in the West, but Xi Jinping is visiting every Asian leader right now and begging them not to make a deal with Trump. The problem is Trump already has $7 trillion in deals. Many of them are from Asia. So this is kind of the big undercurrent right now. Xi is obviously not feeling comfortable. That's why he's doing this Asia tour.
Well, yeah, well, not just him either, right? I noticed that Benjamin Netanyahu himself, the man, made a special trip to make an appeal to Trump to, hey, you know, these tariffs are really going to hurt. And he was like, yeah, you know, too bad. Again, this was the concern with a backdoor. Well, we're not going to let you either import any of these Chinese goods, which may then help you have some type of leverage in the market as they're trying to destroy our market. We just can't allow that. So we have to keep a tariff on you as well. It didn't matter who it was. Now, he kind of blinked on this general tariff, right? But I think that they're going to bring it back, and probably it's going to be much higher when they reintroduce it. This seems to be part of his negotiation. You know, this guy's only 100 days into his presidency, and he still has plenty of time left to kind of use these negotiating bartering tools of introduction, retraction. The doomsayers in the media are doing everything they can to tank the market in the meantime by destroying consumer confidence before a single tariff has ever even taken effect. Before a single tariff takes effect, they're tanking the market with their doomsaying. It's wild, absolutely wild, the speculation that's going on over it, even though it's necessary.
Well, this is the one thing I wanted to ask about was the doomsaying, because last week, this was all I saw when I went on Twitter, the people talking about the stock market, the price of eggs, the economy, the tariffs are good, they're bad. The last few days, I don't see that anymore. And I was wondering if you guys think, like, if you agree with that, if you've noticed that, or have people just got bored and moved on Twitter?
No, here's I'll tell you what's going on there. This worked for the media. This panic drive worked. It was actually somewhat effective in getting people to do sell-offs, shoot their confidence all to hell, tell them that there's a recession coming. I mean, they bleeded it. And because there was any type of change, markets hate change, right? There was volatility in the market. But because they saw that work, no way they're going to ever back off on that tool. For the entire rest of Trump's administration, it's going to be you going on the Drudge Report and markets are going haywire. The Dow doesn't know what to do. Consumer confidence at an all-time low. That's going to be the narrative. They can't back away from it because it was finally something that they felt like worked and made Trump blink. So, unfortunately, you're going to see a lot more of that, and you're going to see a lot more doomsaying and a lot more soothsaying that the markets are unstable. Anything that they can do to drive it down via speculation, they're going to do.
The only thing I would add to that is 90% of the stock market is owned by 10% of the shareholders. And so this is a statistic that kind of gets debated, but I think generally speaking, it's true. So a lot of the doomsdaying is really, it's only hurting the small guys. It's only hurting the people that are small-time day traders. Maybe they run their own financial operation, whatever. And so they're kind of confused at the markets right now or buying into the propaganda. The whales, the people that own most of the stock, they're pumping and dumping and getting richer than ever. And if you actually go look at the trends in the markets, you'll see that that's what's been going on. They love this panic right now.
Yeah.
Again,
they can buy cheap, right? They can buy your dump stock for cheap because you got cold feet, right? I mean, we've seen that how many times?
Exactly. And again, the left is unwittingly helping the people that they claim to hate. It's the whales in the stock market that are benefiting massively off of this doomsdaying, because if you go actually look, it's pump and dump season. Like today, I'm not giving financial advice, but today markets were way down. So now what's going to happen? You go look at certain stocks like NVIDIA, which is probably going to explode in a year. You go look at some of these stocks that tanked today. That's the whales selling. And then now that it's down, the whales are going to buy it. They're going to drive the price right back up. And then next week, a couple days, they're all going to sell off again, but they're going to have made their money. It's pump and dump season. The rich are getting richer. And I think that the media doesn't really know what they're doing because they're just trying to hurt Trump.
Trump, exactly.
But the whales in the stock market, they might be political. They vote, but they don't give a damn. They're making money. That's what they care about. Whether Trump's the president, Biden's the president, or Sonic the Hedgehog is the president, they're making fucking money. And I guarantee you, they're all making money right now because it's pump and dump season.
Hey, Owen, let me ask you a question. Do you think that these massive NGO think tank financial, quote, gurus, right, the same guys who predicted massive stock market crash was going to happen under Trump's first term when the opposite happened, these same guys, they're heavily invested in the market too, aren't they? And isn't it interesting that they're on every single channel, every single station saying, hey, man, doom and recession's right around the corner. Same thing they did when Trump was elected the first time, which didn't come to fruition, right? And these same guys are causing then the same artificial panic that who then does it? Well, them. They're heavily invested in the market themselves. And so it's like, look, you can't trust these bastards. The market also is not a great indicator of anything. It really isn't ultimately a good indicator of long-term health. It's only an indicator of speculation, right? We've got to win the trade war. We've got to destroy these bastards. We have the tools to do it, but we only have the tools to do it now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a good indicator, and it really gets, I think, overvalued as far as the economy is concerned. Certainly, you don't want to see a stock market crash, and that wouldn't be good for the economy.
No.
But at the same time, again, all of these numbers are kind of, maybe give or take 10% either way. But I think it's like 10% of Americans are in the stock market, and then 10% of that 10% own 90% of the stock. So give or take 10%, whatever, 5% any direction. The point is that very little people are even in the stock market, and an even smaller amount of people even control the majority.
Well, and aren't a lot of them in stocks because of 401ks and
and you have IRAs,
other investment firms who are basically managing their money on their behalf. I mean, there's not that many people who directly invest, to be perfectly honest with you. There's just not.
Right.
So yeah. I think good take by Mr. Shroyer here.
Yeah,
I've never been interested in this stuff. I always like to follow when you follow the fake news, but like it's like if you know somebody always goes the wrong way, and so you're like, okay, if he's going that way, let me go over here, and then you end up finding the pot of gold. That's always the case that I've learned with the mainstream corporate media. So when they started doing the panics over the market and everything, I started kind of really following it for the first time and looking in the different direction. And I was like, okay, here's the real story. And it's never been, you don't want to become the dog that gets wagged by the tail. So you don't want to go with this theory of thought 100% of the time because you can end up getting trapped. But the point is, it's a pretty safe bet. When the guy that you know always takes the wrong turn, takes the left, you probably want to take the right.
Yeah, let's see what else we got here.
Have you watched Adolescence yet?
No, I haven't. I probably won't. It's a film on Netflix, and most of my time right now is spent visiting the country.
It's a four-part series on Netflix, and everyone is talking about it. It is prompting conversations about toxic masculinity.
You haven't heard of it at all, Owen?
No, I don't have Netflix. What's it about? What are all these English clips? What are you doing? What are you?
It's an English. It's an English show. That's why, right?
Am I in Britain right now?
Yeah, it's an English. Well, no. The show they're talking about is an English show, and so that's why it's such a phenomenon.
Okay.
There in the UK. So basically, the show follows a young girl who gets murdered by one of her male classmates. And they try to pin it on the manosphere, red pill, Andrew Tate, that kind of thing, and say that they were undue influences that basically drove him into insanity and basically made him look like a like terrorist training camp 101. That's basically the synopsis.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't heard of it because it was a big, when it first came out, people were talking about it on Twitter a lot because it was based on a true story, but in the real version, the guy who stabbed the girl was like an African. They made it a little white kid on the
I
Netflix
saw that.
show.
I saw that post that went viral on X, how they turned it into a white guy, and but it was a black guy.
Yeah, and so this is the show they're talking about, and they've decided over there in the UK that this is the show that's going to like save the country and save the culture.
Oh yeah.
So you have the PM Keir Starmer actually like passed some legislation to like set up places for people who don't have Netflix to go watch it, and like made a deal with Netflix to show it in schools and stuff like this. Cause they're like, this is going to fix the knife problem basically is this.
So
this
it's just
TV
total
show.
propaganda. In other words.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not even well written. It's not even
That's
a well written
when
show.
That's like when they made you watch Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, and so
All right,
they,
well,
this
I'm
clip
glad
is like,
I wouldn't know what they were talking about if I didn't have that context.
yeah. I'll skip ahead. This clip is like quite long, but it's basically the whole like 4 or 5 minutes there. It's like a struggle session with this. She's like the new leader of the Tories in the UK, the Conservative Party. Her name's Cammy Badendock or something like that.
This woman on the screen?
Yes, her. And it's like 5 minutes of the people she's talking to, like being like, you have to watch it. You have to watch it. She's like, I don't think I'm going to watch it. And they're like, oh, you have to. It's kind of bizarre, but I'll spare you guys.
Oh my. Oh my gosh.
That's just the requisite freak show. We always got to have one clip like that in there.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Y'all not
That's
gonna
what
make
I'm going
me
for.
believe or feel any kind of sympathy for Austin Metcalf at all. He put his hands on that young man when he should have kept them hands to himself. When the young man told him, touch me and see, you bet not touch me, that meant that I don't want you in my space. I don't want you touching me. Rosa Parks days is over. You cannot think that you can move somebody out of a seat that you don't own and think that it's going to be okay. And you can't determine how I'm going to retaliate on you when you put your hands on me in an aggressive manner. Austin Metcalf got exactly what he deserved. Point blank, period. It's time out for feeling sorry for somebody's feelings or feeling emotional about somebody's feelings. Austin Metcalf should have kept his damn hands to himself.
Okay, so first of all, I'm pretty sure he was in the wrong chair. Like literally, it was a high school track meet. He was under the wrong tent, but okay, that maybe there was an excuse for that. And I am willing to wait and see what comes out in court to get more details as far as what led up to the deadly stabbing. That being said, it's a pretty tough position to take, defending the kid that brings a knife to the track meet and stabs another kid to death. I mean, that's a tough stance to take, all things considered. But here's aside from what this woman is saying, I think the one thing that we've learned here is if you go and look at the fundraiser for Carmelo Anthony, who, by the way, the judge did a huge favor for him, lowering the bail, letting him get out. That was a huge favor from the judge. So that makes me think he might get a favorable decision in the trial as well. But if you go look at the fundraiser, the people that are donating money, a lot of these small donors, $20, $10, whatever, they're actually celebrating the death of a white kid. I mean, that is an undeniable truth. You can go look at the people donating the money. So this has become more than just whatever happened that day that led to Austin Metcalf's death. It's become much more than that. It's people that are happy a white boy died, period. And so they're going to come to the defense of the black kid simply because, I mean, at this point, many of them are turning him into a hero. I mean, they're selling merchandise. He's raised almost maybe even more than $500,000 at this point. I mean, it's totally getting out of control. And I think it's a pretty simple what about. How can you deny if the roles were reversed, and a white kid stabbed a black kid, and the white kid was released from jail, and the white kid's family raised over $500,000 and got, there's controversies at a new house, new car, whatever. They're in a new house. They're in a new car. If the skin colors were reversed, would cities not be burning to the ground today?
Yeah, but I don't know that white people would rally around a killer under necessarily in the same way if it was similar circumstances, because he wasn't just in the wrong chair. He wasn't supposed to be at the track meet. He was skipping class. He was supposed to be in class at a different school, and he was there like skipping. And I'm
saying, maybe I didn't present this right. I'm saying if it was a white kid that stabbed a black kid to death and he got released from jail, Black Lives Matter would be back in the streets.
Right. No, you're not wrong. All I was saying was that I don't know that if you, I don't know that the white kid would raise $500,000 necessarily. Because I think white people would be a little bit more like it depends, right? If white people were convinced that it was genuinely self-defense, then they would donate. But I feel like if you look at this story, I don't think most people are really convinced of that. I don't think most people are convinced that that was like that he had to stab the kid because his life was being threatened. You know what I mean? Well, he murdered that guy.
He's gonna have to argue in court, and so that's my point. He's gonna have to make his defense in court, and that's fine. And we'll see what happens with that. But again, this woman and other similar commentary, it's not even about what happened that day. They really don't care. They're glad that the black kid was released, and they're glad that a white kid is dead. And I think that is proof positive with the comments that you see on the fundraiser. And so it's really a sad state of affairs that this is where we're at. Barack Obama set race relations in this country back 50 years.
Well, I think I don't know how you can argue that point. If it was the case that this was a race swapped case, I do think that we would see riots in the street again. And the call would be, hey, they're just allowed to do anything they want to us, whenever they want to us. This was not a use of force, which was justified, right? And they're just trying to sweep it under the rug because of the fact that this kid was black. And that's exactly what would happen. I agree with Owen on that. I think that that's a good take. And we've seen it time and time again in the past. And by the way, if that didn't result in that, whatever the future rallying cry would be referencing it. I guarantee you. That's just the way these things play out.
Look, I know you guys aren't racist. I just don't understand how you cannot be a little bit racist when you see things like this play out, because you're saying yourself, when it goes the one way, they raise a bunch of money for the black. They celebrate the white kid getting murdered. If it went the other way, they'd be burning down the businesses and stuff like that. So I don't know how you look at that without coming to certain conclusions about different communities.
Well, I can answer. Let me answer that question directly. How can you not be racist? I'll answer this for myself. Other people may have different
just a little bit,
but for me, for me, the answer is simple. I mean, I can't be racist simply because I grew up around black people. It's the same reason why, people want to push you into this anti-Semitism thing if you're against Israel's foreign policy or their domestic influence. And I say, hey, look, I grew up with Jewish people. So I know that the average black person or the average American Jew is not out to get me, doesn't hate me, and has more similarities with me than what is presented out there. Now, having said that, there becomes this issue with how do you have this uncomfortable conversation about crime statistics, crime data, and where the communities that suffer the most from these issues with crime are without becoming or sounding racist. And so I think that that's kind of the real question, the real issue that we deal with.
Yeah, I would just reduce it. I reduce it a different way, just ontology. So I don't think human beings are ontologically evil or ontologically bad. I don't think that the very state of being.
Either.
Yeah, well, but that would be the sufficient condition for actual racism, right? Would be the idea that there's an ontology behind you just being black, which would put you in some type of category of other than behaviorally. We have to reduce this. Is it cultural, or is it part of the actual ontology of the human being? And I don't believe that it's part of human ontology to do evil actions. I've never believed that that's the case. So I just reduce it this way. I think I can actually make a good counterpoint here to prove this to you. If it is the case that it's like just based on IQ stats and shit like that, right? They don't have the capacity to live in Western society the right way or whatever. Then how come it is that in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, black fathers were present in the household? And why was it that they did have stable income jobs where they were available and the crime stats were far and away reduced to what they are now? If you look at these communities in Detroit, especially, it was not the like brutal fucking place that Chicago and areas of Detroit have become now. So there seems to have been something which changed drastically in this community, which led to this massive abortion and everything else. Well, I can actually point out what that key factor is, and it's the absence of fathers in the home. It is the number one issue that the entire Black community deals with, and they know it. And they have community leaders who discuss it often, that absent this critical criteria, the community fails. Now, how do you demonstrate that that's true? Because we can see the same fucking behavior starting with white women in the middle class and in the lower class who have absent fathers in the home. Their kids are mentally ill, prone to crime. They're engaging in the same types of behavior increasingly. So it can't just be a racial thing. There's more to it than that.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things people are saying, and by the way, I've got your comments up here. People are like, Owen should try growing up in St. Louis. That's actually exactly where I grew up. Literally, I grew up in St. Louis. That's where I'm from. Okay. So yeah, I think I do know what I'm talking about. But what the people are saying now, Carmelo Anthony grew up in a good home. He did have a father. It even looks like he was a pretty active and well-involved student. We'll see how all these narratives change over time, but I mean, that's what is being laid out. Captain of football, captain of track, whatever, father at home. And they're saying, see, he even had a good upbringing and still resulted in this. And my only response to that would be, this is where you enter the issues with culture. These kids, whether they're rich or poor, they're still listening to the same music. They're still consuming the same media. They still have the same, it's cool to be a gangster culture, and it's cool, you got to take your knife or you got to take your gun everywhere you go culture. So that's what it is. And that's what I experienced. That's what I witnessed. I worked in an inner city school for 2 years. I saw this stuff firsthand.
But is that
100%
the case with just the corruptibility of music and stuff like that? Even that, well, I'll grant some ground that there's probably a component there. Look at country music. Country music's pretty fucking awful. It glorifies drinking, and it glorifies glorifies a lot of the same things. Ultimately, if you really listen to it, it does, right? It doesn't have the amount of swearing, right? Unless you're like maybe listening to old David Allan Coe, right, or something like that. But the point is that it's something. There's a deeper intrinsic factor, and when I look at the stats, what I always see is this. If you want to see how the trends operate, all you have to do is see what behavior is shared when you remove X component. And what I see is the same type of generalized horrific behavior, which comes out of single motherhood households, regardless of race and the outcome of their children. And as increasingly it is the case that white women are becoming single mothers, it is increasingly the case that the outcomes for those children are worse and worse and worse and worse. And that is the truth. Look at the abortion stats.
No argument about single mothers, but there's more to it. We might have to do a proper debate on this, you and me, Andrew, at some point. We can't get into all of it now. But
what Andrew is saying is actually undeniable via statistical analysis. It is completely undeniable.
No. The thing is you can look at white children of single mothers and compare them to black children, and you're not going to have the same crime rates, obviously. So you can't reduce it down to this one factor. I don't think that's undeniable.
No, it's always going to be multifaceted, but You're always going to look for the strongest correlates, right? What are the strongest things which correlate with X behavior? So the breakdown of the black family came before the breakdown of the white family. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. The historic standard shows it, right? So you see the effects of that first, especially when he moved into the projects era of the 90s and the late 80s. It was fucking terrible, especially with the fatherlessness, which began to arise inside of that community. The whites are only just now seeing the effect of the complete eradication of the family unit that blacks have been dealing with for essentially 20 years inside of that community. And the results are going to be just as fucking catastrophic. They'll be different, but they're going to be just as catastrophic. I guarantee it.
All right. Well, like I said, maybe we can have a real in-depth discussion about that. We don't have time to go all back and forth.
I'm happy to come back and tangle on it for sure.
Nice. All right.
I kind of just want to read the comments so that I can be So I can be accepted into the crowd.
This one's good. This is Roseanne telling us that the Muslim
Oh,
Brotherhood
my
controls
gosh.
the media.
The marriage of Christianity and Islam, which has killed the Jews and hate the Jews. And Chrislam, they want to be the world's, the one world religion because they want control of Jewish lands with no Jews in them.
Let me.
And we never talk about it because we're not allowed to.
Well, there's a lot of conversation going on about Israel today. That's for sure.
All bullshit. All 100% Muslim Brotherhood bullshit. That's who controls our media, not the Jews. The Muslim Brotherhood controls our media.
I'm glad Roseanne is still doing comedy because that's hilarious.
She's back on the Ambien or something. I mean, that's just wild.
Yeah, I'd love to see any evidence to back that claim up if that's not just full blown humor right there.
Yeah, Chrislam.
But you know what's funny is so this is, you want to talk about Israel propaganda. This idea that Qatar is somehow funding massive media campaigns in the United States of America, which there is Qatari money coming in, no doubt, but it's like 1% of Israel money. I mean, it's a joke. And so the response that I gave to people that were pushing that at me, it's like, oh, it's Qatar propaganda. You're falling for Qatar this. I'm like, okay, why don't you take a walk through the U.S. Capitol and why don't you count how many Qatar flags you see versus how many Israel flags you see and report back to me. Thank you.
So the other thing is, can we talk about the direct correlation between when women have really stupid takes and the fact that they wear berets when they do that? Can we take it? Like, I wish somebody would point this out more often, that there is a correlation, a very strong correlation between a woman's about to say something completely fucking stupid and they're wearing that dumbass beret. I mean, it's
wait a second.
I'm just observing it. I'm just observing it, right? But it's true.
Where's he going?
I don't know. Maybe he's got a beret.
It's got to be, right? He went to grab his beret.
Yeah, I see it constantly. I'm like, what is the deal with this beret and women having stupid takes? I don't get it.
Well, who's that girl? She went on whatever.
Lav,
yeah. And she had the beret. She had some good takes, actually. I thought I like some of the clips I saw from that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about her though, is she speaks out of both sides of her mouth, so you gotta be cautious with them. What the fuck? That looks like
I think
that looks like a marshmallow man.
The intellectual capacity to have this conversation.
Yeah, there we go. I feel like we're back in business now.
I mean, once you mentioned there was a correlation between being enlightened and wearing a beret, I figured, well, what am I doing here?
Nice. All right, I think this is the last clip, you guys, and then we'll do some super chats real quick, and then we'll get out of here. I am really looking forward to chopping this one up with you guys, though.
For one where he says, what is it? Nothing matters but this. He was at a school event at the wrong team's tent with a knife. He clearly chose murder than to walk away, cut and dry here. Nope, wrong. Imagine you are invited to a party at someone else's house, and you are legally carrying a firearm. And then a fight breaks out, and or like an altercation breaks out between you and some guy, and there's drinking involved or whatever. I'm not trying to make a 1-for-1 scenario. I'm trying to create a potential scenario separate from this one with similarities. You go to a party. Let's say you go to a party, and some guy starts saying stuff like, "Yo, man, get out of here." And you're like, "I can do what I want. I was invited to the party." Verbal altercation escalates, and then the dude, you're standing there, and you pull your sweater back, and you've got a gun. You put your hand up and say, don't come close to me, bro. I'm warning you right now. Do not come close. Do not take another step. Then the guy grabs your arm and makes a move, so you draw your weapon, and you use it. Okay, make the argument you have no right to defend yourself when you're being attacked by a guy. Make the argument. By all means, go ahead and do so. I ain't going to do it.
So if the bouncer tries to throw me out of the bar, I should kill him because I'm acting drunk and belligerent. And he's like, this is an insane argument from Tim Pool to me. Like, it's just wrong. And and this goes back to, we're talking about Metcalf again and Carmelo. Carmelo was somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. So you lose any kind of moral authority when you're in the wrong place. And if people ask you to leave when you're not supposed to be there, you should leave. The natural consequence of refusing to leave is that somebody's going to try to make you leave. You don't have the moral justification to murder them because you're not supposed to be there to begin with. Is this contentious? Is this crazy?
Well, it sounds
that's a stupid take. Yes.
Yeah, it sounds to me like Tim made the crucial mistake of assuming things about this case that he just didn't know. So he says, "Oh, if you're invited to a party, well, okay, that's first of all, that's not even the situation that we had here. He was not invited to be under the tent. Apparently, he wasn't even supposed to be at the event at all. So immediately, the outset of his argument falls apart. But this is why I said earlier, and I've maintained the stance. I'll wait and see what comes out in trial. There's going to be other eyewitness testimony and probably other evidence that comes out in trial, and then we can maybe have a better idea of what the situation and the series of events that led up to this was. So for him to sit there and claim he already knows that this is a case of self-defense is taking quite a leap, I would say, to say the very least. So aside from it being a bad take, I would say it's taking quite a leap to assume. I don't know. Tim seems to do this a lot. And I think it's probably a conscious thing that he does. He likes to play the middle ground, and he likes to try to stay in a little safe space. It's why he censors his show so he can stay on YouTube. And it's probably why he comes out and says stuff like this, so he can kind of maintain some of that leftist crowd, BLM type crowd, because he knows that that's what they're thinking. So I don't know, maybe that's me giving him too much credit, but if you want to put it simply, like Andrew said, bad take.
Well, the thing, he changed the take though, to be fair to Poole. I think.
Yeah. And he wasn't saying, just real quick, he wasn't saying that it was definitely self-defense, but he was saying like, I don't know, the kind of like, maybe, I don't know. So anyway, sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I think, well, he did correct the take, to be fair. So all we can do right now, and all Owen's doing, rightfully so, is just correcting what was heard. Right. And I think that's fair to do. But he did essentially correct his take on this as more information came in. In spirit, I think all three of us would kind of agree with the take that you have some kind of ability to defend yourself that should be reinforced by society, right? There's an ability which is there for most people, or should be there for most people, that should be reinforced by society. In a general sense, I can agree with that take. In the contextual sense of this particular case, we're talking about two different things, right?
Yeah, we all agree in self-defense, and we all believe that self-defense can involve lethal force if your life is threatened. The thing is you can't just, when you're in a situation where two people are like yelling at each other, like pushing each other a little bit, that's not a life-threatening situation, or at least you shouldn't just jump to that conclusion, you know?
Well, I mean, shouldn't you though? Let's take a look at the stand your ground laws in Florida and some of the stauncher stand your ground laws in even areas like Texas, where it is the case that somebody can shove you. And if you feel like you're sufficiently threatened, you can move to self-defense, lethal self-defense as a first order rather than a duty to retreat. Now, the reason that those things went into effect and have been so effective is because under English common law, it was always the case you had a duty to retreat first, especially if it was inside of your curtilage, meaning anything in your yard you could see, you had a duty to retreat first. Well, in the age of guns, guess what that does when you retreat? You can't, because you get shot in the back, right? You can't. You used to be able to run away from knives and, clubs and swords. You can't run away from bullets. So the first order becomes, actually in a stand your ground state, the ability for you to defend yourself immediately using lethal force. And that actually works better in society than the alternative of first a duty to retreat, which is what California has moved to. So in spirit, I agree with the idea that if you're the person experiencing it, is the only person who's able to make the determination if your life is threatened or not. Nobody else can do that on your behalf. So of course you can resort to even lethal self-defense with the use of your firearm. It's just that in this particular case, the contextualization is incorrect in how it's being applied, I think.
Well, here's the reality of the situation. When you get into a courtroom, a lot of this stuff, it's not that it gets thrown out the window, but I mean, you basically have a totally clean slate. And this is why if you talk to lawyers in a lot of self-defense cases, if it's a gun case where you shoot somebody and it's just there's no other eyewitnesses, you're in a much better position if you shoot to kill versus if you just shoot and wound and then they're in the courtroom with you. Because now you're having to argue why you shot the person. So I think what is going to end up happening in this case, which is in Texas, by the way, is Anthony is going to have to find a way to justify using deadly force. And I think all the things that you brought up, Andrew, not that I disagree with you, I just think that all the things that you brought up are going to probably be deemed irrelevant. I don't think he's going to be able to justify the deadly force. The judge might disagree. It looks like the judge is going to be favorable. But you do have to justify it in trial. You will have.
Well, that's true. Unless you have law on your side. So let me give you an example. In the state of Michigan, for instance, if somebody breaks into your house and you shoot them, right, and they sue you, which, I mean, this is something which we've seen cases of all over the nation. Somebody breaks into your home, you exercise force, and then later they survive and they sue you or their family members sue you. Well, in Michigan, there's a law that says you are legally, if it's found that this person was justified in defending their home under Michigan Castle's doctrine, that you have to pay not just all of their attorney fees, but you are responsible for 3 times those fees. So attorneys won't even take those cases, right? It eliminated the entire idea that now somebody could sue you for just legally defending yourself or your property. When you kind of scale this out and you look at stand your ground laws and the intention of them, the intention is just this. If some guy is attacking me physically, I'm 41 years old, a well-placed blow from somebody could kill me. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So if somebody attacks me in an unjust way and I use superior force instead of equal force, what in the fucking world is wrong with that? The answer is nothing. Nobody would ever say there was something wrong with that. Or if they came at me with a knife and I used a gun.
If you're not trespassing at the time, I'd be inclined to agree. I don't. Well, look.
No, that's bullshit. Whether you're trespassing or not, if a man physically attacks you, just because
you're right. You're right. I just don't believe that Austin Metcalf attacked him in that way. I don't believe it.
I agree.
And
totally agree.
There's a rumor that there's video of it now. I don't know if that's true, but
I'd be shocked if there wasn't video. Like I said, I think there's going to be a bunch of evidence and eyewitness testimony that will change a lot of perspectives when this thing does go to trial. If Austin Metcalf or let's say his brother or an entire team of track runners were on top of Carmelo Anthony beating him, then absolutely everybody would say deadly force was justified. I don't think that that's going to be the case here. It might have been a shove. But I think raising it to deadly force is going to be a tough self-defense argument to make. It might help him in sentencing.
Don't disagree. I don't disagree. I'm just saying that the spirit here has to be what's looked at of what's him saying. And then we can judge the context being wrong. And I agree the context is wrong. I don't think that this is going to reduce to a self-defense case.
They've already said they're not going to charge him. They're going to charge him as a minor, so he cannot get life. He will not get life. I think he's probably going to look at involuntary manslaughter. Based off of all the things that I see, I think he's looking at involuntary manslaughter. I don't think the judge can make him walk with a self-defense argument, but she can lighten the sentencing, make sure he doesn't spend life in prison. He won't be charged. He'll be charged as a minor, which will help him as well. And look, all things considered, maybe Carmelo Anthony didn't want to kill him. Maybe he stabbed him and he didn't think he'd kill him. And I'm sure if that's the case, he was probably stunned when the guy bled to death. It's not like he had a violent history. So just looking at all the perspectives,
stabbed him in the heart.
It's going to be hard for him to justify. It's going to be hard for him to justify deadly force. But at the end of the day, I think he's probably looking at involuntary manslaughter.
Okay, Andrew, just real quick, going back to the trespassing thing. You're trespassing. The person who owns the property or the security, whoever it is, they tell you to leave. You say, no, I'm not leaving. They say, come on, buddy, let's go. And you murder them. Do you really think you have the moral right in that context to kill them? Right? Like they start shoving you like, come on, let's go. And you kill them.
No, of course not.
Okay, good. Thank you. I just want to make sure.
But I'm trying.
You're saying if they attack you and and there's a real threat. Okay.
Yes,
if there's a real threat.
Like this.
I hope there is video. I hope the rumors are true. They're saying the police have the video. So maybe we'll get to see that at some point and we'll all.
But so you know, like here, but let me reverse the question to you though.
Yeah.
Think about it this way too. Let's see how you would answer to this. Trespassing is a lesser crime than assault. And yet, wouldn't you say that if somebody was trespassing on your property, you'd have a right to defend your property?
Right.
But even though that's a lesser crime, considerably a lesser crime than assault. So it's like you would actually be willing to grant people the right to kill over a lesser crime than assault itself or physical harm to you itself. So you're still willing to kill over property itself. And so the idea for this, I think what Tim's trying to get at is that if somebody is and in his case, what Tim said, if you're invited in, right, you're invited there, so you're not trespassing, they ask you to leave and then they put their hands on you, they could have some claim to self-defense. Maybe that's possible, right? But I think the heart of what he's trying to get at is just the idea of stand your ground in general and what that entails and what that means. And I think it's perfectly acceptable to use overt amounts of force. I think force equalization is stupid. I want to use way more force than my opposition because I want to win and I don't want to get hurt. That's the entire idea here. So I think in context, he's incorrect. That's true. And as it applies to this case, totally incorrect. But I think ultimately the idea of stand your ground is a great idea.
Here's a hypothetical that could end up becoming the real question at the end of this. If Metcalf, let's just say Metcalf threw a punch. Let's say a punch was thrown and that's what led to the escalation and the grabbing of the knife. How does that change perhaps the context of all of this? Because in many court cases, professional athletes, fighters, they'll consider your hands to be deadly weapons. And so that could change the perspective. And if there's video of it, we'll know for sure. But how would you feel if that was the case? If Metcalf even threw a punch?
Yeah, that would change the context. I'm not, here, man, guys used to be able to fight and maybe you lose, maybe you get roughed up a little bit. It doesn't mean somebody has to die. You know what I mean? We've kind of lost that aspect of a sense of honor between men of let's fight. Hey, let's go. Right, you, me right now. Let's go. But not taking it too far. I'm not going to gouge your eyes out in a street fight or what, you know what I mean? So it would change if he punched him, that would be more aggressive than what I imagine happened. And it would be an additional piece of context to consider, but I just I don't
but I mean, is that honor really? When we talking about honor societies, weren't they killing each other constantly in duels?
Yeah, but that's different because there was agreed to, right? You challenge somebody to a duel, you agree to it.
Mutual combat and duels still exist in the Texas Penal Code.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Is and mutual combat exists in Nevada too. So in the state of Nevada, it's a $25 fine, I think, or a $30 fine if you go out in front of a bar and knock the shit out of each other. In fact, I've been told that there's men. I can't tell you that this is from personal experience. But there are people who carry the fine in their wallet. Okay, in case they get into a fist fight. Right, they'll pay the fine on the spot.
Right, but if you pull out a knife and stab the other guy, it's not a fine. So
yeah, right. But we're talking, but now we're talking past each other, right? So the idea first was there used to be the idea that men could just go knock each other about, and it's yeah, there used to be that idea when you're talking about an honor-based society. In honor-based societies, the samurai cut each other's fucking heads off with katanas too. And in honor-based societies, people were jabbing each other with pointy sticks. They were shooting each other with dueling pistols.
Yes,
all of that is
but they
true.
agreed to that in advance. When two men of honor agreed to have a duel to the death, there was rules.
You're refuting your own point because you're refuting your own point because the case is if there is no pre-agreement, then It's just assault and you get shot and that's the end of it, right?
Okay. I don't love that, but I see where you're coming from. So, all right. Let's do super chats real quick. And then,
let me make one closing statement in regards to all this.
Sure.
It'll be quick. For the young people listening to this is the lesson. You need to learn the art of de-escalation. It might literally save somebody's life. Learn the art of de-escalation. Don't try to do this tough guy thing and prove yourself. You'll end up making a drastic mistake that could cost somebody their lives. Learn the art of de-escalation.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and also in this, I think that we're disagreeing about the nuance, not about the heart of the issue itself, really. I don't think any of us would take a look at the objective metrics of a case like this and come to radically different conclusions at all, right? The conclusion or the nuances that we're arguing about is in hypothetical situations that aren't even in regards directly to this one, to just kind of test out and feel out when it's even appropriate to do things like this.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately when the facts of the matter of this case are out, I doubt there's a single person who's talking right here who is going to have a single disagreement about what should or shouldn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll let's leave it there.
Okay.
We'll do super chats. Guys, if you send a super chat that was just like a thank you or whatever, I really appreciate it. I'm just going to skip through those for the sake of time here. There's not too many, but I do always try to tell my guests we'll keep it to 2 hours. So I want to get through this quickly here. Shifty Meter sent $20. He says, very insightful show so far. Andrew, please school AP in the debate. I used to like his and David Wood's work against Islam, so it hurts to see every stream he does now is strawman kvetching.
I'm gonna do my part, sir. That's all I can promise, is that I will do my part to lay out the most compelling case from the purview of Christian ethics that following a political ideology, which has nothing to do with Christianity, is really not part and parcel of Christian ethics, and making a case from the Christian perspective is going to be very difficult, I think, for him.
So wait, you're debating Peterson?
No, AP. He, what's his name? Apostate prophet. I'm trying to think of Ridvan. Isn't his name Ridvan or Ridvan? He's recently a convert to Orthodox Christianity. He's a catechumen at the moment. But we're debating whether or not there is an ought from a Christian perspective to support Zionism. I do not think that there is. I don't think that there's much of an ought to support any singular political ideology from a Christian ethical system. So I think that that's just a really hard case for the opposition to make. But there it is.
Sir Thomas Drake sent $2. How do Owen and Andrew reconcile the crime stats where violent crime for wealthy blacks is higher than the 40th percentile of whites? Yeah, so higher socioeconomic static blacks commit more violent crime than lower socioeconomic status.
Yeah, sure. But we weren't talking, I wasn't talking at all about the wealth disparity or income disparity. That wasn't what the heart of the argument was about. This comes up often in the idea of what about Appalachia, for instance, where you can see that these are extremely poor people, but predominantly white. Why do you see such a huge decrease in the crime rates? Well, but look at the intact family units that are there, though. Just because you're poor, that is a correlate to crime. Nobody's going to dispute that across all racial groups, some more than others. Nobody disputes that's true. But is it the primary correlate? Not really. It seems like the primary correlates that I can find when I start breaking these stats down is fatherless homes seem to be the number one. Number one indicator there's going to be mental illness, problems, abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse of all different types across all different spectrums revolve around no daddy. And by the way, I think if you polled every single sex worker who was in the United States, do you think that you would find a correlation with fatherless behavior? I bet you would. I bet that would be one of the biggest correlates that you would find. So that's what we were discussing, not whether or not income disparity equaled criminology. So that's not really what the heart of the argument was about.
Yeah, and obviously the answer they're looking for is genetics here, and so that's just what they're trying to get from us.
Yeah.
But I mentioned this earlier, and I guess I could kind of rephrase it if you're an affluent black kid, the cultural pressure for you to still be hood and gangster is still there, whether you're rich or poor. That's the cultural pressure. And so I guess to go back to what Andrew was saying, unless you have a father that is saying, don't do that, then you can end up being enveloped into that culture. This might be a crude.
But you also have to make the point too. Like, I wish that what would be included in this argument is like, that is the case now, but was not always the case. Like, how come we're never discussing the fact that I can point to times where this was not the case for this community? It just wasn't the case.
Was it? This might be a crude analogy, but wasn't that kind of the storyline of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Like that he was in the hood and then went and moved with his very rich family because they were going to beat his ass or something like that, or kill him. I think that was the major plot.
Yeah. Are you trying to say because his uncle Phil was a male role model and then he turned it around? Is that what you're getting at? Or
yeah.
Yeah, it was a TV show too, so whatever. Port film.
Yeah, like I said, crude analogy,
right,
but
right.
It's just like it all goes back to the same thing. It's like father figure, avoid the toxic culture.
Okay. Port Film Co-op sent $2. Oh man, okay, I'm sorry, but I'll read it. Is Owen based on the JQ yet?
Is that am I supposed to answer that?
It's no, it's all right. Eric
You can never do enough. It's the same thing. Here, you can never do enough for people that exist in these funnels, and I get it. That's fine. I have a problem with Israel's leadership. I think it's a serious problem. Israel controls our foreign policy. They control a lot of our domestic policy. They have way too much influence in politics. They were likely involved in the assassination of JFK and September 11th. So does that count? I don't know. That might not be enough.
That's pretty good. Good start. Eric Vigilant says $5. I saw your, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Don Browning says, imagine all the copycats, groans and cries. $20. Thank you. I think she's talking about the Louis, that was the Lily Phillips copycats, I think is what she's referring there. Amazing Grace sent $5. Have you seen Judge Joe Brown on Spaces? Mind-blowing comments there. It would make great content for YCSP. I'm not sure, like Judge Joe Brown on X Spaces. Do you guys know what he's talking about? I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I don't know, but thank you for the $5. Shell Beach sent $5. Culture is just a people's outward expression of themselves onto their environment. This is what we don't need to rehash all that, but I do kind of agree with that personally.
You mean the genetic argument?
Yeah, if you want to put it that way, it's like you want to say, oh well, they listen to this violent music, so then they act violent, and it's like, well, maybe they make the violent music because they are violent. You know, it's a chicken and an egg kind of causality thing.
Genetics, the interesting thing, and genetics is a nuanced conversation, especially when it comes to racial dynamics. And I'm always happy to have the conversation. I've gone rounds a few times with Mr. JF Gary Epi about it. And admittedly, he's a scientist, and he's much more well informed on the topic than I am. But I've dove into it, I would say, a significant amount. You would have to say then that it's the expression of the genes in the environment, right? There would have to be expressions, and based on those expressions, we would pick up behavioral patterns. Well, so what are you going to correlate it to? You would say, well, I'd correlate it to things like perhaps IQ, right? IQ seems to be a universally agreed upon thing. But then how do you explain the disparity in the fact that even when you have white communities that have lower forms or lower IQ within the same kind of average mean of blacks, you still don't end up with the same type of crime stats. But if you take out one single factor, which is the father, you begin to see equalization almost immediately. So how is that explained? If it is the case that it's just an expression through IQ, you'd have to point to some other genetic behavior. Like,
I don't
is
know
there an
about
inherent
equalization.
is there like an inherence of violence? No. I didn't say it's equal immediately. I said you get closer to equalization. So this is what you're looking for. It's just like if you're looking at the wage gap argument, right? If you take X component out and X component out, you reach parity very quickly.
Let me ask you this, Andrew.
Or with the wage gap, right? You reach parity. All we're trying to do is reach parity.
Sure.
What are the factors that when we take those factors out, we now have parity between these two factors? That's all we're looking for, right?
Okay, and suppose for the sake of argument, just for the sake of argument, suppose you come up with a list of like the 30, 40, however many strongest correlates with violent crime. And when you control for all of those things all the way down the list, you still find a disparity when you look at racial groups. Would that convince you? Would that,
that would be convincing evidence,
right? Not to say that race is the
Yeah.
only factor or the most important one, even
Sure.
but that simply it is a factor.
Look, I can be convinced
Yeah.
with evidence. And if you show the evidence, I would be convinced that this is showing a phenomenon that at least needs to be investigated and looked at. And I would not dispute that at all. What I am saying, though, is this is like, well, then point to what it is. What are the genes that cause this then? What is, because if the expression of them equals just behavior, then we can easily control that expression and behavior by finding similar groups in IQ or whatever, right? And then start taking those mitigating factors for control and yanking them out until we reach parity. That's what you're supposed to do in order to kind of figure this out, right? That's the whole idea here.
Well, identifying the genes is a work in progress. So we're just that they're working on it. They're working on it.
They're working on it. One day they'll be able to point them out, but that day is not this day.
Yes.
So you know what I mean?
Okay. CK40 sent $10. He says, Andrew citing the 40s only shows that they require extreme social pressure. Without it, they are more violent than whites. Whites are suffering family breakdown as well, and yet have a different outcome. So to paraphrase what I think the point here is that back before the civil rights, there was more fear amongst blacks that they would be cracked down on very hard if they stepped out of line. Do you think that could also be a factor?
Of course, it would be a factor in all social groups. So if you want to look at degeneracy, for instance, you want to look at trans phenomenon, LGBTQ favoritism from white women, them being a massive deciding factor in these things. A lot of that is because of the social breakdown of female correction in society. A lot of that is due to the fact there's a lack of social pressure among whites for this type of behavior. So of course, if there's any controlling factor for social pressure, that's going to create some type of issue for this. Would I consider that in a breakdown? Of course. But does it tell the whole story? I don't think it does. And the fact of the matter is, I can look at the historic timeline of the 20th century, and I see two very different Black Americas which existed. Very, very, very different. One had fathers there and one didn't. And whenever I look at the behavioral issues from the top down of these families, it seems to always start with the fact, I mean, where's there a pandemic, a social pandemic like this of fatherlessness in any other group? It just doesn't exist. The heightened rate of it is insanity. And that you can literally begin to correlate and backtrack from when this phenomenon started to when the heightened rate of criminology or criminal activity started going through the roof. Freakonomics, that was a book which got a lot of controversy years ago. In Freakonomics, they were saying, look, abortion was the best crime stopper ever, right? The reason abortion was such a great crime stopper is because it took people who were in these lower socioeconomic categories and who would be single moms. They killed the kid. Voila, no crime, right? It was essentially a eugenics argument. But the case of the matter is, it also points out something else, which is pretty important in that book. If you take a control for a group and you just removed 70% of the fathers of all white people who existed in the United States, all families, 70% of them had no present fathers whatsoever. I don't think that there would be any sort of white. I think the whole thing would degrade very quickly in exactly the same way. It might manifest somewhat differently, and the types of crimes might be different. But man, I'm telling you that correlate is so powerful for each indicator that it's really hard to look past.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I could go back and forth with you for like hours, so I'm not going to even get started.
I'll come back and do it. I'll come back and do it.
Yeah. We'll schedule.
There's never I never have hard feelings about combos like that. It's not gonna irk me if you destroy me on this topic. I'm just happy to do it.
Yeah. We'll set something up. Harbar Nar sent $5. Hopefully the new Cad Bane story coming on May 4th remasculinizes Star Wars. In the meantime, join the dark side among the Crucible ranks. I have no idea. What is Cad Bane? Do you know what that is, Andrew?
Do it. Join the dark side. Yes, you gotta he's just saying you gotta become a member of the Crucible. And the Crucible.video, it's the finest place for content anywhere on the internet. Even if you don't like me giving descriptive explanations on various things you might disagree with me about, I'm still a really fucking entertaining guy. So you might as well come listen to it anyhow and have a good time. Right?
What is Cad Bane? Is that an actual Star Wars thing, or is that a Crucible thing?
No idea.
Okay.
No idea on the Cad Bane thing.
Shelby sent $5, and it's kind of just a rehash of the social pressure one we just did, so I'll skip that. But thank you for the 5, Shell Beach. Brandon T sent $5. God, everyone wants to argue with Andrew. Why is fatherless common in SA then? South America? What is SA? Demographic.
Yeah, I can't speak. It's very difficult for me to speak when you're talking about global phenomenon, especially with Africa, primitivism in Africa.
Oh, yeah, South Africa, maybe.
Yeah, things like this. There's a completely different history there. And it's actually not even at this point necessarily the same people group. So most American blacks are mixed to some degree now. Like it's not, in fact, black nationalists make this argument oftentimes, and it's somewhat compelling from their end. They're like, look, African blacks can actually be racist towards us. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking? That's insane. How could you even make a case for that? And they're like, well, because we're actually a different people group due to the interracial mixing. And when you look into it, they're right. There actually is quite a bit of interracial mixing, which happened in the United States. And they have as much of a case, I think, to say that they're a distinct people group as many other people groups do. So I don't even think that you're making the correct comparison. It's like apples and oranges in many ways.
And by the way, black Africans are actually, many of them, quite racist against American Africans.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
It is. Yeah, I was surprised to note that when I started going into the like black nationalist spaces, because people do make claims which on their face seem absurd, but stupid me, I'm always like, well, I mean, what what if what they're saying has some, you know what I mean? So I'm always checking it out. I'm always diving into it and trying to research it out. And I'm like, damn, actually, there's kind of a point being made here. That's a somewhat decent point, and it becomes a case of tribalism more than it becomes a case of like of anything else there. And they firmly believe that African immigrants come in and take on white nationalist characteristics against them. It's the wildest shit I've ever heard. But their justifications for it, they're in any case, their line of logic for reasons, how they get there, I can at least understand so I can combat it.
All right, guys, please stop sending super chats. I want to let these guys get out of here.
Send him hundreds of super chats. Send him thousands of dollars in super chats.
Yes, do that, but also no guarantees we're actually going to read any of it because
I set the time aside this evening. If Mr. Shroyer has to go, or
actually, I told him I'm charging him quadruple past 10 o'clock. So.
That's right.
Okay. Michael Arnold sent $5 for Larry. Never trust a Canadian to go back for this man. Poor Larry. Again, I have no idea.
Larry will be remembered, but I did tell you that some of us may not make it in this conflict, and that was a risk I was willing to take. So unfortunately, poor Larry was left behind in the TikTok universe. We just could not quite pull him out, and Larry will be remembered.
Okay. Dan Vicious sent $5. He says disenchantment and demoralization is the order of the day.
Yeah, that's true.
Vincent DeVecchis sent $30. Thanks very much for that. He says, just a thought. If gender is fluid, as the leftists say, a man or woman is whoever identifies as a man and woman, then physical characteristics are irrelevant. So you don't need to change your body at all. Yeah, I've heard that one before, right? Like why would you have to have a sex change if gender is like fluid and a social construct and all that?
Because it makes them feel better.
Well, obviously the whole thing is a lie.
Yeah, if you don't, they're going to kill themselves. That's why.
Whenever the foundation of your ideology is a lie, then all you can do is build more lies on top of it. But what I love doing, and we had a couple examples of this earlier, or like with Douglas Murray, is I love when people have logical inconsistencies or even impossibilities to use it against them. So, okay, they want to weaponize racial or identity politics, but at the same time, they believe everything is a spectrum or a construct. So therefore, I am a Black Jewish woman, and I am now the strongest social group that exists, and there's nothing you can do to stop me, or you're an anti-Semite, or you're a racist, and I'm a lesbian too, so you'll be against my LGBTQ rights. They say, no, you can't do that. I say, why? This is your logic.
Yeah. So the short answer is gender's not fluid and leftists are retarded. But thank you for the $30.
You had me at leftist.
My answer was more fun.
Matt sent $5. Crucible member here. Awesome to see Owen. Thank you for all you have done, Owen. Watched you years ago going right into the Antifa dens. Badass. Yeah, I remember, man, you facing off against AIDS Skrillex. What a classic moment in internet history.
I like to feather my nest with this one. I mean, I think I pretty much created the internet genre of going on the streets to own the libs. I mean, I think I kind of created that entire genre of content. Now there's a bunch of people that do it, and I'm glad they do because I can't really do it anymore. I get assaulted and everybody knows who I am, so they don't talk to me. But I think I kind of created that genre.
Yeah.
I might do something like that if public intoxication was more legal, but it's not, unfortunately.
In Nevada it is.
Yeah, Nevada it is. That's true. That's true. Well, I mean, there's in Butte, Montana it is too. You can be public
And New Orleans.
there
New
too.
Orleans is fun. Just avoid the cars driving through you.
That's right.
Okay, last one here. Ortho Debo sent $5. LP, can you make a brief argument to Andrew about your version of Christianity? Look, man, I'm a novice. I'm a novice Christian. I tentatively am leaning towards the kind of sola scriptura idea that everything you need is in scripture, but I'm not going to debate Andrew on that. I'm not equipped to do that. I am a layman moron, really. I'm still.
And by the way, that's totally fair. So there's many times where you can have a tenable position that you fully believe in, and it has been convincing to you, even though you yourself are not in a position to defend that. That's not only completely correct and very normal, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I would say that that's the status quo of most people with most beliefs, that they're not always equipped to defend them, though they have been convinced for whatever reason. And that can happen for a whole variety of reasons. Christian theology is extraordinarily complicated. And I'm often also not in a position to be equipped to deal with some of the more nuanced theological questions and just leave them on the table for men who are much smarter than I am.
Yeah. Okay. One last one did come in. It's $20. So I guess I'll read it. Thank you, Loopy Locust, who says, Andrew, can you make Molly Little a regular on whatever podcast?
Who the fuck is that?
Yeah, no idea. Okay, everybody, that's the show. That's the show. Thank you for.
I'm like, I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for watching. Thank you to everybody sending the super chats. Really appreciate it. Big thank you to my guests, Andrew Wilson and Owen Shroyer. I put, as always, links where you can find their X accounts or websites. But is there anything else you guys want to plug before we go?
Yeah, well, you made this critical mistake last time too, right? So I think there's like 5,000 over here live. Why don't you plug your channel also, bro?
Oh, yes. This is iHypocrite on YouTube, and I'm on Twitter, iHypocrite. So follow me there. Subscribe to my YouTube. 5,000. Shout out to the 5,000 Crucible people.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is iHypocrite not giving himself the best press, but his Twitter is fucking hilarious. And one of my go-tos for no particularly good reason other than he posts some really funny shit. So I highly suggest that you go, even if you disagree with a lot of what he posts or doesn't post, it's still usually you'll get a laugh out of me. So I do very much appreciate that.
Thank you. And Owen, anything you want to say to the people? Any last words or plugs before we go?
Yeah, follow me on X at Owen Shroyer 1776. Put the notifications on. Follow me on Rumble.
Where's
Rumble.
my follow back, Owen? Where's my?
I follow you. Don't come at me like that.
Yeah,
pull up your
bro,
phone right
I'm
now.
pulling it up.
Oh, Owen has 2 accounts, so that may be
I do have 2 accounts, but
he has 2
I'm
Twitter
positive
accounts.
I'm following him on the 1776 account. Look, hands are clear here. All right,
let's find out. Let's find
I'm
out.
not cheating. Go ahead.
Okay, I got Owen Shroyer 1776. I'm following you. I am not followed. It is not a reciprocal follow.
That's a lie.
This was fake news. Fake news by the Infinite Warrior today. Fake news. Total fake news.
No. I'm being set up here. It says right here, you follow each other. What are you talking about?
I don't know. I'm just busting your balls, bro. I didn't even.
I will pull this. I can literally pull this up on the screen right now. I am putting this to bed. Look at that. Look at that. There it is. Nice try.
I didn't even look, but it was really funny. I appreciate it.
Come for the king. You better come correct.
You better come prepared.
Follow me on X like Andrew does at Owen Shroyer 1776. Put on the notifications, rumble.com/Owen, or follow my daily show, owenshroyer.show. And to everybody, my heart goes out to you.
Nice. All right, everybody. Thanks again. Thanks to the guest. Have a great night, and we'll catch you next time.